Scott Bessent is celebrating what he calls a major breakthrough in US-China trade talks. He says he just saved America from a 100% tariff war. But beneath the headlines and photo ops, something feels off. The deal he's praising might not be a show of strength. It might be a warning sign. The White House claims there's now a solid framework to restore balance between the two biggest economies in the world. But look closer, and that framework rests on shaky ground. It's built on three things: tariffs, soybeans, and rare earths. And all three could decide who really holds the power. As markets cheer and Bessent takes his victory lap, questions are piling up. What did Washington actually give away to get this deal? And can it really protect an economy already cracking under inflation, rising prices, and debt? Scott Bessent says the US has reached a very substantial framework with China, one that supposedly prevents a new 100% tariff war.
President Trump gave me a great deal of negotiating leverage with the threat of the 100% tariffs on November 1st, and I believe we've reached a very substantial framework that will avoid that. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers. I think we are going to be able to discuss more balanced trade.
On paper, it sounds like a breakthrough. The US avoids a tariff explosion, farmers get relief, and trade looks balanced again. But behind that optimism, there's a bigger question. What did Washington really trade away for this moment of calm? This framework isn't a full trade agreement. It's a fragile understanding built around three main pillars. The first is tariffs. Trump's warning of an extra 100% duty on Chinese imports pushed negotiators to the table. The second is America's struggling farmers. Beijing had cut its soybean purchases to zero, forcing Washington to promise new aid and push for renewed Chinese imports. The third is rare earths, critical minerals that power everything from smartphones to fighter jets. The US wants China to delay its new export restrictions for at least a year to avoid supply shocks. According to Bessent, Beijing has agreed to both, buying American soybeans again and postponing rare earth limits. In return, Trump will freeze his 100% tariff plan. On paper, it sounds like a win for Washington, a clean trade breakthrough after months of chaos. But the deal's details remain secret, and no one knows what the US had to give up to get there. Bessent's confident tone may calm markets, yet beneath it lies growing unease. The American economy is fragile, inflation remains high, and the public is running out of patience. The real question is whether this so-called framework can actually hold together under pressure. The American economy is showing deep cracks beneath the surface. Consumer sentiment has fallen to a 5-month low, and current conditions are now at multi-year lows. Inflation expectations climbed again, from 3.7% to 3.9% for the next 5 to 10 years, showing that people no longer believe prices will ever return to normal. Affordability is back to 2022 levels, when the cost of living crisis first exploded. Everyday Americans feel the strain. Food, rent, and fuel are rising faster than wages, and the pressure is spreading across every sector. The tariff war only adds fuel to that fire. While it hurts Chinese exporters, it also drives prices higher for US consumers. America still buys over $1 billion worth of Chinese goods every single day. Doubling tariffs on those imports would send retail prices soaring and make inflation uncontrollable. The United States is a consumption-based economy. When prices surge, spending slows, and confidence collapses. Data already shows people cutting back on major purchases and savings shrinking fast. Manufacturing costs are rising too, as imported industrial parts become more expensive. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle of higher costs and weaker demand. Behind the political theater of tariff threats lies a simple truth. The US cannot raise prices on everything it imports without hurting itself. Each round of new duties chips away at consumer confidence and pushes inflation expectations even higher. And this growing pressure is exactly why Washington is desperate to keep the current deal alive, because the longer the trade war drags on, the more fragile the American economy becomes. While Washington worries about inflation and consumer debt, Beijing has far more room to maneuver. The share of Chinese exports going to the US is significant, but nowhere near crippling. Global demand for Chinese goods is still rising. Over the past 12 months, China's total exports have approached $4 trillion. Even if trade with the US stopped entirely, that loss would account for only about 2.5% of China's GDP, maybe even less today. For Beijing, that means endurance. For Washington, it means pressure. Scott Bessent is confident that China will soon return to buying American soybeans, calling it a big relief for farmers across the Midwest.
But I'm actually a soybean farmer, so I have felt this pain too. And there are a couple of things happening here. One, the Chinese have substantially dropped their purchases to almost zero. So they unfortunately have been using American farmers who are amongst President Trump's biggest supporters. I believe when the announcement of the deal with China is made public, that our soybean farmers will feel very good.
He might sound lighthearted, but for real farmers, this crisis is no joke. U.S. soybean exports to China have already fallen to zero, leaving warehouses full and farms close to bankruptcy. Even during the 2018 to 2019 trade war, China still bought about 1.5 million tons a year. Today, that flow is gone, completely cut off. Trump's administration has already planned a $10 billion bailout to prevent mass bankruptcies in the agricultural sector, but subsidies can only cover the damage for so long. Bessent's optimism depends on Beijing reversing course. For that to happen, China would need to drop its 10% tariff on American soybeans, removing roughly $12 billion worth of levies. That's not an easy decision. Doing so would reduce imports from Brazil and Argentina, the two countries now dominating China's soybean supply. Brazil alone has become China's main agricultural partner, supplying over 70% of its total soybean imports. If Beijing does return to U.S. soy, it won't be an act of goodwill. It would be a calculated move to gain leverage elsewhere, in technology, finance, or export rules. And there's also a financial motive. U.S. soybeans for October were priced about $90 per ton cheaper than Brazilian beans, a 1 to 2% discount that adds up quickly in bulk shipments. But even with that advantage, China's 10% import tariff keeps American crops uncompetitive. Dropping it would effectively remove levies on around $12 billion of U.S. goods. A short-term resumption of trade may look like a diplomatic victory for Washington, but it could easily conceal deeper concessions behind closed doors. For now, the hope of renewed Chinese demand is all that's keeping many farmers afloat. If those purchases don't materialize soon, the soybean comeback Bessent describes could turn into another political illusion, with real economic pain left behind. The rare earth part of the deal is where the real leverage lies. These minerals are the backbone of modern technology, from fighter jets and electric vehicles to smartphones and AI chips. And right now, 70% of America's rare earth supply still comes from China. For key elements like scandium and yttrium, the dependence is 100%. That's why Bessent pushed Beijing to delay its export restrictions for at least a year. A short pause meant to buy Washington some time, but a year isn't much in the world of supply chains. Mining projects take years to develop, and refining plants even longer. What this delay really gives the U.S. is a chance to panic buy. Washington and its allies are expected to start stockpiling rare earths at record levels to secure industrial production. The problem is, China doesn't just mine these materials, it refines them. Beijing controls 60% of global rare earth mining, but an overwhelming 91% of the refining capacity. Malaysia, the second largest refiner in the world, has only a 4% market share. That gap is enormous, and closing it will take time, money, and expertise that the U.S. currently lacks. New supply deals are being signed across Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Australia, even Vietnam. But these efforts can't replace China overnight. Building new mines and refineries could take 5 to 10 years. So even if China agrees to postpone the restrictions, it still holds the upper hand. Washington may talk about diversification, but for now, the global Rare-Earth Lifeline still runs straight through Beijing. S&P Global recently analyzed 9,000 companies worldwide and uncovered the true price of the tariff war, a staggering $1.2 trillion black hole across global supply chains. Trade barriers are working like hidden taxes. Importers now pay more for raw materials. Exporters see their profits shrink, and consumers end up covering most of the damage. In fact, only 1/3 of the total cost is absorbed by companies. The rest falls directly on the public through higher prices. The Trump administration promised that tariffs would bring cheaper goods and stronger industries. But prices tell another story. Everyday essentials are getting more expensive.
Mr. Secretary, coffee prices are up 19% from a year ago. Beef is up almost 15%, and bacon up almost 6%, just to name a few. So when are all grocery prices going to come down, as President Trump promised?
Well, Kristen, it's unfortunate. As much as I like you, you like to cherry pick. So, when we came in, it was eggflation, eggflation, eggflation. Egg prices are down, gasoline prices are down. Overall, the inflation since President Trump has come in, has come down.
Instead of addressing the surge, Bessent brushed it off, calling those numbers cherry-picking. But millions of Americans are living that reality every day. The affordability crisis has become the new normal. Inflation is squeezing households from all sides, and tariffs only make it worse, quietly taxing the very people they were supposed to protect. By freezing the 100% tariff plan, Washington isn't claiming victory. It's trying to prevent collapse. The move is less about winning a trade war and more about keeping the domestic economy from tipping over. American consumers are already stretched thin, and the latest data confirms it. Subprime auto loan delinquencies have surged to 6.43%, a level even higher than during the 2008 financial crisis. Families are falling behind on payments, credit card debt is at record highs, and every new price increase adds more pressure. Imagine if tariffs had doubled the cost of imported goods. Everyday items at Walmart or Target would suddenly become unaffordable. People would have to choose between paying for groceries or keeping up with their car loans. That kind of shock could send consumer spending, the backbone of the U.S. economy, into free fall. This is why the administration is desperate to keep the framework deal with China alive. A full-blown tariff war would crush consumer confidence, raise inflation, and ripple across global markets. Bessent's victory lap is really an attempt to buy time and stabilize the situation before it unravels. For now, both Washington and Beijing are taking a breather, pausing their economic battle before it spins out of control. But the structural tensions remain. This isn't peace. It's a fragile truce holding together a global system already under immense strain. The Chinese themselves are warning that a multipolar world is coming, one where no single power dominates global trade or technology. Even if this fragile framework survives, the divide between Washington and Beijing will keep widening. The chip war, the AI race, and the global fight over resources are still moving full speed ahead. China is building a multipolar world through trade and infrastructure, while America is turning inward, trying to shield itself behind tariffs. Every deal now is just a pause in a much longer game of economic survival. So was this really a trade victory? Or America's quiet retreat from its own tariff war? Tell me what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.